Well, let's get some comment on the earnings season as it continues. Of course, in many parts of the world, Jim Rogers is still with us in Singapore. And Jim, I've been reading some research that suggested 70 or 80% of the earnings reports we've seen so far this quarter have been better than the markets were looking for. Is this because of some expert expectation management by corporates around the world, or is there really something more robust in the global economy than perhaps we'd realised?
I'm sure some of it is expectation management, as you put it, Anna, but remember what the comparisons are with. We're talking about the second quarter of 2009 when the world essentially was coming to an end. You remember that the end of 2008, the beginning of 2009, we all thought that the world had ended. The markets hit bottom in March of 2009. Well, those are the comparisons we're up against. So things are actually better than people expected, but they should have looked back to see what the comparisons were. And remember, the governments were spending huge amounts of money, and that money's been flowing into the system in the last couple of quarters. Worry about next year. Don't worry about the second quarter now. That's history.
So talking about next year, if you take away that stimulus that you talked about, what are earnings going to look like? What's your outlook?
Oh, I'm sure the comparisons in the second quarter of 2011 will be much worse. It will certainly not be the skyrocketing comparisons we have now. No. Be careful.
And now, I know you own some Australian mining companies. Now, given what's happening, the hoo-ha controversy, well, I read somewhere, a little bird told me, but given the hoo-ha surrounding the super resources tax over in Australia, you still holding on to them?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the future of mining is terrific in most parts of the world. Now, Australia has made some mistakes. They're starting to rectify them, but like it or not, if the Australians cannot kill the mining industry, they'll kill Australia.
Hey, Jim, it's Nicole in the States again. We have little birdies who are writing into us this morning. I want to get you a question from Brendan in Chicago, who says, last time you were on CNBC, you said you were a buyer of the euro at 120 when others were saying it was a strong sell. That ended up being a great call since it rallied to 129 since that day. Do you see much more of an upside on the U.S., on the dollar euro, or is it a good value? Do you think it's good to short, or what do you think are the midterm moves likely to be?
Well, Brendan, I'm glad you remember. Every once in a while I do get it right. I'm glad somebody remembers. I still own the euro. I'm not selling the euro. I have absolutely no clue how it's going to work out. The pressure was so great that I had to step in and buy it. I'm still watching it. I suspect it will go a bit higher, but ask me next week, next month, next year. I have no idea how long I'm going to own it. Events will dictate what happens.
But has the European stress test on the banks made you more confident about owning the euro?
Christine, the European stress test was a total waste. I mean, I know you have to talk about something on CNBC and in the press, but that was a total waste. No, of course it has no influence on what I do with the euro or anything else. That was just PR and little else.
Jim, but the results of the stress test have been criticised for many quarters, but we do have a great deal more transparency about these banks' exposure to sovereign debt around the periphery of Europe, for example. And as a result, today we're seeing some of the banking stocks really climbing. Credit Agricole up by more than 8%, SocGen up by more than 8%, BNP also trading very strongly. There's some relief out there that some of these French banks and others don't have greater exposure to some of the peripheral European debt. So in that sense, could you say that the stress tests had proved to be successful?
Well, I said it was PR, Anna. They've got the stocks up. That's the whole purpose of PR. Make stocks go higher. That's what CNBC and then many PR agencies are all about. Yes, it makes things look better for a while. Are they really better? No, they didn't look at a lot of things that could go wrong. And if you want to buy bank stocks, by all means. I'm not buying bank stocks at this point because I'm not sure the problems are really solved. In fact, I'm not sure the problems are solved in most parts of the world economy. So I'm watching rather than acting.
Jim Rogers, that's very cheeky of you. You know that we're not talking up stocks here at CNBC. We're just reporting the news. Jim Rogers, Chairman of Rogers Holdings, stays with us for the rest of the show. Thank you very much.
Let's get more reaction from Jim Rogers on BP. Jim, you talked about earlier you're watching BP very closely. Given the situation surrounding offshore drilling, the amount of regulation now that's going into this because of the BP disaster, what's your outlook on offshore drilling, and does this make you more bullish on clean energy?
Well, it certainly makes everybody more bullish on clean energy because this is just going to contribute to higher prices of energy. More drilling, less drilling, more regulations, more expense means less oil down the road. So, of course, anybody who's in in green energy. But even without this, clean energy, renewable energy, call it what you will, has a great future because everybody loves it. Nobody's against it. No politician, nobody's against it. So it's got a great future. In the case of BP, some head had to roll, and he was the top. The head guy is always supposed to go when you have a disaster like this. I wish politicians would listen to it. And let's see if they can clean up their reputation and clean up the Gulf and start over. But it's a long process.
So how do they change the bureaucracy, Jim? Is anything actually going to change?
Changing bureaucracy takes forever, Nicole. And BP is a gigantic organization. They put together a few companies to build BP, each of which had its own bureaucracy. So this takes a long time. Your former guest was alluding to that. But remember, in the Gulf, you have to deal with the BP bureaucracy. You have to deal with the U.S. government bureaucracy, the state government bureaucracies. Oh, my goodness, there's bureaucracy everywhere. It will take a long time to change BP, and it's not something that's going to be done by the next CEO. It'll take 1 or 2 or 3 CEOs.
A quick question in, a viewer question. I want to get as many of these in as possible. We have some loyal viewers. We have some big fans of yours. Laurel from Austin says, I absolutely love your honesty. What are your thoughts on the downstream crude products, and do you ever play cracks in petroleum? What do you think about storage?
Well, I haven't done crack in a long time. There's certainly plenty of opportunities and fortunes to be made by anybody who's going to spend his time and looking at the margins, the various crack margins. Plenty of ways to make money in the energy business: storage, transportation, drilling, and all sorts of ways for somebody who's going to. But please don't do it unless you know what you're talking about. Most people couldn't spell or don't have any clue what it means by the crack margins. So please don't invest unless you know a lot about it. This is not an easy way to make a living.
Straight talking Jim Rogers will have more of you for the next hour. So Jim Rogers, Chairman Rogers, holding our guest host for the next 2 hours. Keep those emails rolling in. We would love to hear from you.